After Junior Caminero's breakout season, should we be drafting him in the first round? And do we still have any faith left in Shane Baz heading into 2026? Today, we cover the Rays on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominick Martino, riding solo today, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe to the channel and give you notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things on a platform like Apple or Spotify, that'll last 5-star ratings and reviews. We would truly appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And lastly, give us a chance on the Insider's Track. Listen, even though fantasy baseball season is over, fantasy baseball season never ends on the Insider's Track. This time of year, we're talking Keeper, Dynasty. I got my 2026 rankings in the works, so if you want those, join us on the Insider's Track. The link is in the bio wherever you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And all right, I mentioned it up top. Junior Caminero breakout season for the Tampa Bay Rays. 45 home runs. Chandler Simpson, speed demon on the base paths, stole a bunch of bases. It's got some familiar faces in Josh Lowe and Jonathan Aranda, that had some interesting seasons we'll talk about, from a fantasy baseball perspective and, what we should expect for 2026. Then we got the arms. Do we still believe in Shane Baz after a up and down season? We got Ryan Pepiot and Drew Rasmussen, who actually performed really well. And then we'll finish up with prospects. Who is Theo Gillien? And if we got time, we'll talk some Brody Hopkins as well. But let's start with the first half of this, first portion of this episode, and let's do some bats. Let's talk about Junior Caminero. And, what we should expect from him in 2026 and break down, the season he had in 2025 from a fantasy standpoint, of course. So, this season, Junior Caminero had played in 154 games, had 602 at-bats, 93 runs for Caminero, 28 doubles, 45 bombs, 110 RBIs, 7 steals, and Caminero hit 264. So I love Caminero. Matt and I were kind of, preaching in, the preseason or, in spring training. We were saying, hey, listen, the kid looks great. The only real big thing was that I think that everyone kind of talked about Caminero is that he had struggled with lefties. But honestly, it didn't really bother him too much this year in the sense of, hey, the overall numbers look really, really fantastic. The underlying stuff believes in Caminero when you're talking about the power numbers. Even the underlying stuff for batting average, when you look at Caminero's batting average, it's a 269. Batting average, if you're not familiar with its expected batting average, it kind of shows where the batting average should be rather than where it was. And when those two numbers are very close like that, it's just believable that Caminero could, kind of have this performance again. I think Tampa Bay themselves got a couple of young bats. The Tampa Bay, I feel like, always has young bats coming up through the system, and they're just, doing the right thing over there. So I fully believe that Caminero is this good. I think he can do it again. Don't forget, Junior Caminero is only 22 years old. So he did all of this as a 21-year-old. It's just incredible when you see a young bat like this, in his first real go of it, because last year, Caminero only played in 43 games and had 165 at-bats in the bigs. And just when you see a 21-year-old come up and hit 45 home runs and have a 264 batting average, I'm buying in. I'm buying into Caminero. I don't necessarily think he's a first-round pick for next year. But, hey, second round, you pair him with a speed demon, and you're going to be sitting pretty. If you can take a little bit of a hit and, not get grabbing somebody that is going to steal you a big amount of bases, I think he's going to be great in redraft and keeper dynasty. I don't think I don't think anyone's selling on him at the moment. And if you have him, I wouldn't sell. It'd have to be like a blow me away offer. I'd have to be winning the trade ridiculously, if I'm giving up Caminero, which I, basically said I wouldn't do anyway. So, once again, you have a kid at 21 years old, 45 home runs, 110 RBIs, 264 batting average, 93 runs and 28 doubles in 154 games, 602 at-bats. It doesn't get better than what Junior Caminero did this year. Huge fan of his. I think there's a very bright future ahead. Just get as many shares as you can wherever you can, because it's going to be a fun ride. Let's keep things moving. Let's talk about one of my personal favorite players, from the past season when you're talking about fantasy baseball. It's Chandler Simpson. Now, I feel like I've talked about Chandler Simpson a lot this year, so I won't go too crazy in depth here. I'll still get my point across, and we'll still do a little bit of a breakdown here. I just don't want to, nauseate you guys with Chandler Simpson talk that happens all the time in this podcast. But Simpson played in 109 games this year in the bigs for Tampa, 414 at-bats. He had 53 runs. He had 15 doubles, 3 triples, no homers, 26 RBIs, 44 steals. He had 20 walks to 43 strikeouts, which actually isn't too shabby. And he hit 295. Now, Chandler Simpson's not really ever going to give you much power, but the speed is absolutely elite. Could Chandler Simpson steal 60-plus bases next season? I think it's possible. They moved him into the leadoff position, in the last couple of months of the season. And, for a good reason. The underlying stuff, believes in Chandler Simpson in the 2 categories you want it to believe in Chandler Simpson in. The sprint speed and the X batting average. X batting average for Chandler Simpson is 299, and in the sprint speed, Chandler Simpson's in the 97th percentile in all of baseball. One of the fastest guys out there, and he actually doesn't whiff a lot either. So that's great. Squares up the ball pretty, good as well. So he's putting the ball in play, and he's putting it in spots where the defense isn't. We like to see that. So a guy like Chandler Simpson, if you've been around long enough, and if you remember D. Gordon, or formerly D. Gordon, D. Strange Gordon, that's the kind of profile you're getting here. You're getting a guy that could hit 300, that could steal you a bunch of bases. And honestly, I think if Simpson plays in 145, 150 games next season, why couldn't he score 90 runs? With Caminero behind him, of course. I think if I had to give you a projection, a 150 game projection stat line for Caminero next season, I think if things go, I'd say this is like probably a 60th percentile finish. Give him 90 runs. Give him one homer for, the fun of it. Give him 40 RBIs. Give him 60 steals. And give him a 290 batting average. And at that point, honestly, it's an outfielder number 2, in my opinion, in a regular 12-man league. Because you're going to be able to supplement the home runs and RBIs. And in a standard 5x5 category league, you're only missing the home runs and RBIs. He's going to be elite. I say elite in steals. He's going to be very plus in runs, and he's going to be elite in batting average. So you're getting 2 potentially elite in runs. So you're getting 2 definitely elite categories. You're getting 1 potentially, good to elite category and 2 down categories. And just pair Chandler Simpson up with his teammate Caminero. Perfect pairing, actually. They're on the same team in real life. You pair them on your fantasy baseball team, and that's exactly how you win out with a combo like this. I'm very high on Chandler Simpson going into next year, just because it's a cheat code at steals. When you play in a weekly head-to-head categories league, which is what Matt and I specialize in on this podcast, Chandler Simpson's winning you steals on a week. Most of the time. So love me some Chandler Simpson heading into 2026. Love what he did in 2025 as well. Before we move on, we talk about Josh Lowe, Jonathan Aranda, top prospect Carson Williams. And then we got a couple of the pitchers, those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys. I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you just don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I built parlays, tried player props, and even follow the live lines during the games. It makes watching football even more exciting, whether you've got a little something riding on the action. And, it doesn't matter if you're a casual fan or if you love diving into the stats. FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And guys, I'm here in New York. If you didn't already know that, I'm a Giants fan. And it's finally, it's exciting times here in New York for New York football, at least for the Giants, right? I'm betting on Cam Scatterboot, and I'm betting on Jackson Dart. I'd pretty much take any bet that FanDuel has out there that you could put on them. I think them boys in blue are doing New York football right. So I'm betting on Scatterboot. I'm betting on Jackson Dart. And you're going to do that on FanDuel.com, or you're going to download the app and do it there. Guys, FanDuel, let's get it done. And all right, if you're a fantasy baseball fanatic like myself and Matt, you just want to talk fantasy baseball 24/7 year round, and you can do that with Matt and I on the Insider's Track, where once again we're talking baseball all the time. This time of year we're talking keeper, dynasty. I told you guys earlier I got my 2026 rankings in the work. It's a rough draft, but there's something there at least you can look at and have a little fun talking about. So those are there if you want those on the Insider's Track. Just ask me on there. And I'll shoot it over to you. But once again, so much going on fantasy baseball-wise on the Insider's Track. If that sounds interesting, new link is in the bio if you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. But let's keep things pushing. Let's talk about a little bit of Josh Lowe, man. And I feel like it's kind of the same story, as most years. Injuries, he's always a little bit banged up. But when he was out there, he contributed. We'll say it like that. He contributed. I know Josh Lowe, the batting average is a career low at 220. But, the 11 home runs and 18 steals in 108 games is not too bad. And that's over 395 at-bats. He did have 56 runs, which was cool, 21 doubles as well, 40 RBIs, and, like I said, hit 220. I would expect Lowe to be a little bit closer to his 250 career mark. The speed is legitimate. The power is a nice little, it's okay. It's not elite power, but I do like the speed on, Josh Lowe. Man, I would say this. If he could get to that 130, 140 game mark like he did in 2023, I don't see why he couldn't, hit 18 home runs and steal 25 bags and give you a 250 batting average next season, something along the lines of that. Josh Lowe's still only, 28 years old. He's going to be 28 years old next season. And I do think that there's, I don't want to say upside here, but I don't really think that you're going to have to, I don't think you're going to have to pay too much for Josh Lowe. So I'd go out there and I'd do it. I think kind of like a bench bat in a 12-man league or I don't even want to say utility, to be honest with you. If he looks good in spring training, maybe we all buy back in and he's utility bat. But in a 5 outfielder league, he's your 5th outfielder. And I think you feel comfortable in a situation like that because you got the power, you got a little bit of power, you got the speed upside. Even if the batting average kills you, I think if Josh Lowe hits in a decent spot in this lineup, the runs and the RBIs aren't going to be horrible. So Josh Lowe, not super excited for 2026, but he's somebody I will draft if the price is right. Let's keep it pushing. Let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Aranda. Aranda is another like that Josh Lowe type where he was useful at points this year. He was really, really good when it came to batting average, but he wasn't really offering you a lot else, right? That's why I say it's almost a Luis Arias profile where batting average, little bit of pop. The 14 home runs in 106 games isn't too bad. It's 370 at-bats. He had 56 runs, 22 doubles, 59 RBIs as a 27-year-old. And actually, I totally forgot, Aranda was an all-star this past year. Somebody that's got an interesting profile. heading into 2026, kind of, interested to see where he's going to be drafted. Because people might look at that line and they might be like, oh, well, you know what? Aranda's still pretty young. There could be a lot of improvement. I do like the profile on Yahoo where he's first and second eligible. Not sure if he's going to maintain that. But, when you look at some of the things here, in the profile, you say, hey, could he tap into potentially a little bit more power? But would he have to sacrifice the batting average for it? So, I mean, if Aranda could play 150 games, you're talking about maybe it's 25 home runs with a potential 300 batting average and some decent counting stats. I like that at second base, especially at second base where, you're not necessarily always counting on a big amount of power, right? So if you're slotting Aranda in there at the second base position and, hey, you wind up with 25 home runs and a 300 batting average, 80 RBIs, and 75 runs. Maybe it's even 85 RBIs and 80 runs. And Aranda was hitting in the 3 spot. Actually, in the last game of the season, he hit in the 3 hole. So I like that. I actually, I'm kind of. This is the off season. This is where where I'm doing my research as I'm talking to you guys on sometimes, this time of year, and it helps me build my rankings too. And the more I look into Aranda here, I'm really liking what I see, and I think you guys should too. Actually, after I finish up recording here tonight, I might move Aranda up in my second baseman rankings, as I told you guys, I'm working on my rough draft team, a really, really rough draft, early 2026 rankings. And I think Aranda, I love actually what I'm seeing here. I think there's some upside as, a 27-year-old. And I feel like Tampa always, their prospects might not always pan out, but I feel that they always do at least a decent job trying, to figure it out for them. Like, this next guy. Let's talk a little bit about Carson Williams. Carson Williams, number 1 prospect for the Tampa Bay Rays. But the thing is, he did wind up getting the call this year, and it was a really tough showing for, Carson Williams in his first little taste of the bigs. It was 106 plate appearances, 99 at-bats, 11 runs, 5 homers, 2 steals, a 172 batting average over, once again, that short sample size for Carson Williams. I think with Carson Williams, there's some upside here. He's still super, super young. He was taken in the first round, back in the 2021 draft. He's had his ups and downs in the minors as well. But, Tampa they might have something here. I'm curious to see if he's going to be in, the opening lineup come, 2026. I don't know necessarily. So Williams' profile is speedster, got some pop in the line in the bat too. Could potentially be like a 20-ish home run, 25, 30 steal guy. The batting average, I don't like how it profiles, to be honest with you. Could be a 250-ish hitter, 240, 250-ish kind of guy. So this is more of your deeper league cut. I don't know if I mentioned it. Carson Williams, shortstop, eligible. So this is, I want to say, your 15s, your AL onlys, from the jump. Maybe you throw them on your watch list in your regular leagues and you kind of see where things go with Carson Williams, especially if he does have a hot spring training and, Tampa says, hey, he's going to be out there on opening day. Could be an interesting name. That's why I kind of wanted to mention him, kind of just talk about him because he's Tampa Bay Rays number 1 prospect. But I didn't want to put him at the end where I have 2 other prospects lined up because I have 2 guys that haven't debuted yet. That's how I kind of been doing these, episodes. But Carson Williams, even in Dynasty League, if you can get him 30 cents on the dollar, 40 cents on the dollar, I might think about it. Probably wouldn't pay too much more than that, though, because, if it doesn't work out, then you really don't have to invest too much. But before we move on and we talk about, the pitching of this Tampa Bay Rays team and what we think about them for 2026, and then we'll get into the prospects that have not debuted yet, like Theo Gillien, Brody, Hopkins, those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys, I want to talk to you about my friends over at Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less than on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown. And you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. My personal favorite part, though, is Prize Picks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with the player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to, follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And, the injury reboot feature, guys, I don't even know if you've heard about this one yet. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. And I don't think anybody else is really offering that at the moment. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups. Once again, after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. And all right, guys, let's talk pitching. Drew Rasmussen. I've been a fan of Drew Rasmussen for a long time. If you've been watching this podcast, or even back when Matt and I were, before we joined Locked On, we were, the Fantasy MDs days, I always used to preach Rasmussen because he's never, except for his rookie year, which was only 12 games played in 15 innings. There wasn't even a starter at the time. He's been really, really good. So if you go back to 2021, Drew Rasmussen has had a sub-3 ERA every single year. He's not really a strikeout guy, but the whip has been a sub-108 every single year, since 2021. This guy just gets it done. First full year making like 30-plus starts, though he made 28 starts back in 2022. But last year he was hampered a little bit by injury. When I say last year, I'm talking about 2024. But in 2025, Rasmussen made his first All-Star team, 31 starts, 2.76 ERA, 150 innings, 127 strikeouts, 102 whip. This is just what Rasmussen does. I would expect very similar results next year, even if the ERA goes up to a 3.2, right? And it's still under a K per 9 with a really good whip. I don't see how Rasmussen's not a top 40 starting pitcher going into next season. I think if you get him as your SP4, SP5, that's going to, be okay. Might mitigate some of the injury risk that Rasmussen has shown throughout his whole career. But the talent's there. I don't think the talent is deniable at all. Let's do this. Let's actually combine. Let's do Rasmussen's numbers. If we combined his numbers from the 2021 season all the way through this past season. So that for Rasmussen is going to be 81 starts, 118 games total, a 2.79 ERA, 445 innings pitched, 407 strikeouts, and a 104 whip. And his FIP, which is fielding independent pitching, is an ERA indicator, tells you where the ERA should be rather than where it is a 3.23 over that time. So even if that's where his ERA winds up this next season in 2026, I still think we're profiting. I would say once again, probably closer to a top 50 starting pitcher than top 40, just because of, we want to account for that. Hey, he's not going to be that K per 9 kind of guy. And, he might miss a little bit of time. So once again, I would love to get him as my SP5, but if you are in a if you are in a deeper league and you have to take him as your SP4, I'm not going to be mad at that. Let's move on to one of the most aggravating starting pitchers from last season. It's Shane Baz. Matt and I were big Shane Baz guys, and we apologize. I apologize on behalf of Matt and myself because, man, it was just a tough go of it, on the season, even though Shane Baz did have some good starts down the stretch. The 26-year-old this past season, 4.87 ERA for Baz over 31 starts, 166 innings pitched, 176 strikeouts, and a 1.33 whip. I think Baz just has to get back in the lab this, off season and kind of just figure out what went wrong and just make the improvements necessary if possible, because it's just tough, man. It's tough to see a kid with this kind of talent. The pitches are there. Like he has good stuff. The fastball's still averaging 97 miles an hour. He gets a lot of ground balls. It's just I honestly couldn't give you a really great answer. The knuckle curve gets good results. The changeup got good results this year. His only pitch that was really getting like bombed was the cutter. The cutter was getting hit at a 337 clip, which is absolutely horrible. And Boz was throwing the cutter about 15% of the time last year. Maybe it's get the cutter out of there, lean into that changeup a little more, which was getting good results. And honestly, in 2024, Boz wasn't even throwing this cutter that was getting really, smacked around. It was four-seam slider, knuckle curve. But Boz kind of backed away from his slider this year because it was getting hit pretty hard. But then again, he was only throwing it 3% of the time, and he only threw it. He didn't really throw it that much at all this year. I want to say he threw it less than 100 times. So I think there is a world where Shane Baz at 26 years old can make the adjustments needed to, kind of get his career back on track. And when I say get back on track, if you look at Shane Baz's 2024 season, he had 14 starts. He had a 3.06 ERA. He had 79 innings. He had 69 strikeouts and a 1.05 WHIP. So there is a good pitcher in there. Baz has shown us that he can do it in the big leagues. And Baz obviously has had really good results in the minors. It's just a matter of him being able to put it all together. I'll say this. It almost reminds me of the career trajectory, almost a Freddie Peralta-ish kind of vibe where he has the talent to do it, and you've just seen such a mixed bag throughout his career that, I feel like, but there will be a season where Baz is just like a top 20 starting pitcher in the league. It's just a matter if he can do it, if he can figure it out and get there, if he can put it all together, right? Because like I said, the talent's there for a kid like this. As for 2026 prospects, I think you'll be able to get him as one of your last starting pitchers. Let's say if you draft 8 starting pitchers, you'd be able to get him as your 7th or 8th starting pitcher. I don't think you're going to have to pay up too much for a guy like Shane Baz. It might be worth the investment one last time to at least see if Baz can figure it out. Let's move on to somebody who had a good season. Let's talk about Ryan Pepiot. I've always liked Ryan Pepiot going back to the Dodgers days. He does it in an unorthodox way. Like if you watch him, you might not necessarily always be super impressed, but Pepiot still gets the job done. Very, very, very solid this season. 31 starts, 3.86 ERA, 167 innings, 167 strikeouts, and a 1.16 WHIP. I feel like we have kind of figured out Pepiot. It's going to be over 3.5 ERA. It's going to be around that K per 9 or potentially over, and then you'll get like a 1.15, 1.16 WHIP like the last 2 seasons. I think if you put the last 2 seasons together, you kind of figure out who Pepiot is. That's like an SP6, SP5, depending on your format, just kind of like an old reliable. But I really want to get into these prospects, so I'm not going to do too much more Pepiot talk, but I do like him. I think Pepiot is just a solid starting pitcher. Let's talk about Theo Gillien, Tampa Bay Rays top prospect that has not debuted yet. He's the 65th prospect in all of baseball, according to MLB.com. Gillian was drafted with the 18th pick in the first round in 2024. He's 6'2", 195. Really known for that hit tool and that run tool, right? Really, and if on the prospect 20/80 grade scale, he's got a 60 hit and got a 60 run, according to MLB.com. He only played in A-ball this season in 2025 in the minors, but he did pretty well down there. It was 73 games played for Theo Gillien, 267 batting average. He had 62 runs, 12 doubles, a triple, 5 homers. He stole 36 bags, had 18 RBIs, had 64 walks to 75 strikeouts. I love what Gillian brings to the table, especially that speed, that elite speed that he has. And this Tampa Bay team, they know what they're doing with their prospects. So they already see this kid, Gillian at 20 years old, doing his thing down in the minors. I don't think he debuts next season. I think I could see it in 2027 potentially, because I still want to see him get through AA and potentially AAA next season in the minors. But Gillian could be, I want to say, like a 10 to 12 homer kind of dude, maybe 15 if he grows into the power and that frame. He's got the size to do it. And there's big steal upside here. You're talking about 40 plus steal potential. I think easy for a guy like Gillian. So let's pay attention to him once again. Outfielder Theo Gillien, the Tampa Bay's top prospect that has not debuted yet. We'll do a little bit of Brody Hopkins talk here before I head out. He is the Tampa Bay Rays top pitching prospect. I like Hopkins. He's got a really nice fastball. That's what he's really known for. It gets in the upper 90s on average. He also throws a nice slider as well too, and he's got the big size for. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. That fastball, it like rides up. It's like a riding fastball, and then he even throws a sinker too. So he's got like a nice little pitch mix here. He was somebody who was drafted late. He's drafted back in 2023 by Seattle in the 6th round, but he's really come a long way. In 2025 in AA, Hopkins made 25 starts this past season, 2.72 ERA, 116 innings, 141 strikeouts. Batters only hit 204 against him. The whip was a little bit elevated at a 1.25, but Hopkins is, I think, somebody that if he figures it out could make his debut for Tampa Bay next year, and we need to keep our eyes on him. But guys, that is going to be all for today. Shout out to our everydayers and new listeners making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And after you make us your first listen, for your second listen, go and check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB or on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. So, guys, until next time, see ya.